Lord of Omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Sur and the Kodan Armada. Get ready? Prepare for blast-off.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
This is 80's Reboot Overdrive podcast.
We were dancing just like Swayze when Jennifer Grey had nose. Oh, how I miss the 80s, but I'm too young to really know. Too young to know.
Oh my god. That is like so dated.
This is Rose Fullerton, 80s music girl, and my very first Maiden Voyage podcast. And with me today is Kelly Carpenter. Hi, Kelly.
Hello, how are y'all doing? Good to be on. Glad
Today,
to help out.
yes, he's going to help us out with all kinds of stuff today. We're going to talk about music, and specifically 80s new wave. But first, Kelly is going to tell us a little bit about himself.
Well, hello. I'm Kelly. I've been interested in this music since I want to say 1984, but maybe even a little before that. I really got the idea for generic male DJs in 1984, 1985 as a freshman at Radford University in Virginia. Go Highlanders. And my first year there, I really spent a lot of time analyzing what other people were doing in clubs, what they were playing, what people wanted, what didn't work. And, I kind of just observed for the first year I was there. And the second year, decided to get into it. And I had a couple friends who were also like-minded. And, we kind of hit the ground running because I had already figured out a lot of things not to do. So our focus was on what they call new wave, alternative, progressive, and then, quirky pop that set us apart from just the dance guys. And, I kind of created the Generic Male brand, which is the name of the company. Back before I was even DJing, it was the name of our gym hockey team in the intramural league. And we had a name that was kind of unusual because all the other teams were fraternity teams, so it'd be like, a Tau Kappa Epsilon or Phi Sig. And we didn't have anything cool like that. So I just made up Generic Male and made it very, I didn't know it then, but it was Arial was the font.
No.
But it became Arial. For me, it was just a hand font, a handwritten thing the first time. But and instead of having numbers for everybody on the back of the shirts, we just had a barcode that was always the same. So that's actually how the brand started, and it kind of served us really well. So I kept it the whole time. But after I graduated, my friends did it down at school for another year or two. They might have been on the 5 or 6 year plan, I guess. But I kind of had to let that go for a few years, several years. And in 2004, I actually put up a Generic Male website. I wasn't smart enough then to figure out how to use YouTube, properly. But I was just trying to reinforce the brand, to kind of keep it out there. And, you can go on Wayback Time Machine on the web and see the very first iteration of our website. The earliest one I could find was May 3rd, 2004.
Wow.
And, it looks a lot different, but then it doesn't look so different. The focus back then was more on music news.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it was kind of, like a blog nowadays. Where
Yeah.
I would, talk about the new Cure album or, someone that got arrested or someone died or whatever.
Yeah.
But that kind of kept my foot in it. And then within like I'd say 18 months ago, I figured out, I've got all these mixtapes that I've been doing forever for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, that consisted mostly of these songs, these groups that everyone loved back then. And, YouTube is a way to get it out to more people. So I put the first one up, and it kind of caught on pretty much right away. And if you go on YouTube and look at the Generic Male DJs channel, you'll see that we have the first one that's up there has been listened to, I want to say, 1.7 million times.
Wow.
Or thereabouts. So it's, it's not, Friday, but, it's, pretty popular.
Oh, yeah.
And that was encouraging. And, there was some learning involved because you can't just put any song you want on YouTube. You have to understand the rules for copyright, and some songs are allowed and some aren't. And then some are allowed in certain countries and some aren't. So it's still a guessing game to a degree, but there are tools on YouTube where you can determine usage of songs. That helps.
Right.
So, I've been putting together a series. The New Wave series is up to 23 volumes. And,
yeah.
I try to put them up every so often. Sometimes real life kind of prevents me from being as consistent with it as I would like. But
right.
we built a pretty good archive now, so people can, kind of set up their playlist and listen to, it's like basically 23 hours times 80 minutes or so per. So
yeah,
you do the math. That's like a day's worth of listening.
Oh, yeah.
Nonstop.
And you can cover a lot of ground listening to.
And if you look at the playlist or the songs that are on there, you'll notice that I don't go for the obvious stuff very often.
Yeah.
But I also don't go for the really obscure stuff that will scare everybody away either.
No.
Kind of try to find a center point
right.
that will seem comfortable to a wide audience, but also introduce folks to things maybe they hadn't been exposed to when it was
right.
new, or things they might have heard on their favorite station. A lot of people say, I used to listen to, WLIR in Long Island, or, K-Rock in LA, or WHFS in Washington. And, I used to hear WHFS in Washington also, or in Baltimore, I mean. And, so I know the kind of songs that were being played there, and it was a little bit more obscure.
Yeah, kind of underground
stuff. So I kind of try to mix it up. But I also try to kind of maintain the feel of those tapes. Now, it does sound a little bit more unprofessional now because, well, I'm older and I care a little bit more.
Well, yeah.
But the technology kind of allows me to do it a little bit cleaner, but, they're not perfection. And that's kind of on purpose too. I mean, I want it to sound organic, like it's something that you might have had a friend put together for you at some point back then.
I think that's the beauty of it too. I look at a lot of these, the first one, like you said, has, 1.7 million views on it. And when I am just kind of hanging out listening to them, I read a lot of the comments on there. And you've got quite a following. The fans really love the music. And they love you all for putting it up there.
Well, it's really cool. I mean, and you saw some of the comments. A lot of them are kind of like there's several categories. It's like I love this music. We used to play this music, or we used to go to X club and hear this music, or we used to hear it on X radio station, or I can't believe that you made me feel like I was 18 again, or which are all really cool. And then occasionally you'll get one where it's like someone will say, this changed my life, or this saved my life, and like they might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's like, whoa, wait a minute, like now you're actually impacting people, instead of just entertaining them for an hour. It's like sometimes you get to actually change their life somehow in some little way, which is really cool.
Right.
And a testament to the, immediacy and impact of social media, obviously. but it's cool. And, it gives me great joy to put these things together too. So I'm really no different than any of the fans. And I'm also still learning also,
Yeah.
I don't want everyone to think I knew there's 1,800 songs playing on our radio station right now. Some of them I didn't know in 1984, I mean, but
Right.
as I do all this stuff and I do the research, I'm finding and discovering new things even today. And it's really a testament to the diversity, the immense amount of talent, and the immense amount of, really quality music that was being produced in the early to mid 80s.
Absolutely. I mean,
Just massive amounts of groups. Some of them may have had one album or two, but you can almost, if you know one song from the group, you can almost always find 3 or 4 more
yeah,
that really have tons of merit.
definitely.
And so it's an ongoing learning experience for me too. And I haven't done a live job in probably at least 15 years, but I'm hopeful that maybe at some point someone will contact me and say, geez, we're having this party or whatever, and I'll get back into that too. But yeah, that's how the thing started. It's like it's a kind of a me wanting to recapture my youth to some degree, but having access to better technology and better means to do things and to get it out to a wider audience than we were ever able to reach, back when we were actually doing it for money.
Right.
There's, as you know, on the internet, there's not always a lot of money, but there's a lot of reach, a lot of satisfaction. So that
Right.
counts for a lot too.
Definitely. I was going over some things yesterday, looking for music from Prince, and it's pretty difficult to find Prince on YouTube, and that's basically because he had his catalog, removed from the internet pretty much. He took it off of Apple Music, and there was another one that he wasn't. I don't think it was Spotify, but it was something similar. It might have been.
Well,
and he
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that he basically said, why am I keeping it on the internet? It's not like anybody's making money from it. So basically he's saying musicians aren't making money from the internet, but he said that like in 2007. So.
Well, I think what's happened is, and we've had a few that have, edit or whatever because a song, the request song, block it or the song be removed. And, but I respect that because I get it. It's their stuff. Like some of them see the merit of having it on our YouTube stuff because it's getting exposed to people that never knew about it in many cases. So, they might sell some stuff. Someone might go on iTunes or Amazon.com and buy the Flock of Seagulls album that was put out, 30 years ago.
Right.
Or at least buy some of the MP3s,
Right.
And so I think some of them see the merit of it. Some of them are still trying to figure it out. And Prince, obviously, he was a trailblazer in internet marketing and music in general because he was one of the first artists to take his stuff back and to market it independently online, in an intelligent manner. So, I respect all the different opinions, but I'm grateful for the ones that really see the benefit in having the stuff out there in front of people because they know some people aren't just going to steal it. They're going to go out and get it for themselves.
Exactly. And I guess that was what his purpose was when he was doing this interview. And he said, I'm just wanting people to listen to the music the way it was intended, whether it be on vinyl or CD, to listen to it, in a broader scope so you can actually hear everything that's going on. Kind of like, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but the promotional Dre Beats. If you ever remember that commercial that he did or his headphones. People don't hear all the music, kind of a thing. So,
well, I think on ours, I intentionally now, when I put the audio together for those things, they're all mastered, to 320 kps, which is the highest bit rate that I can do feasibly for YouTube uploads. So,
right.
I'm doing them in an actual digital audio workstation, with that's like clean digital stuff and EQing it properly, and so it should be presented in a manner that will please the artists that realize it's on there. Like you
Right.
shouldn't hear anyone complaining about it, because it's being presented in as pure a manner as possible.
Right.
Some of the recordings are better than others, in general.
Right.
And you can't really help for that after a certain point. But, we are doing the best that we can to present the stuff so it sounds like how the artist intended, or at least as close to it as possible as the media will allow.
Right. And I think too, having the music in its natural state, so to speak, it starts to debilitate after a while. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever had an album and accidentally left it in somewhere where it's warm, but it gets warped, and CDs don't last, 10 years maybe.
They get nicked up. I've got hundreds and hundreds, thousands of vinyl LPs and 12-inch singles, and I've got my turntables too, from back in the day, and
nice.
But those records took a beating. Some of those records were probably played 1,000 times, in 4 or 5, 6 years, and I mean, it obviously pays a price. It exacts a toll.
Right.
But what you're hearing on YouTube, even though it's limited by YouTube's limitations, I mean, it's within reason. It's probably, some of them are probably the best examples of the songs that you're practically going to find anywhere.
Right.
Except for, maybe on iTunes if they put them up there themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I like it to sound good. I like it to sound also, though, like it was.
Right.
So that's what we were talking about, where it's mixed. It's not beat mixed like in the clubs. I try to do the transitions so they make sense. I think a lot about the pacing of the songs and the placement. And, you probably noticed on one of the later ones, the one that started out with the volume 23. Like, I really went to great pains to make the first two songs kind of sound like they belong together. I'll listen to the beginnings and endings of all the songs before I start and kind of think of how they would lay together.
Right. That actually was impressive, when I first listened to it. Of course, that was after, your little trucker.
Well, that was, that was,
I was livid. I was so mad. I was like, you've got to be kidding. And then I forgot it was April Fool's, Yeah,
the April Fool's, we were changing our format to Big Trucker Hits. I mean, it seemed like a good idea at the time. But, what was funny is, and not funny like you're stupid, but funny like, geez, it's a big planet. There were actually some people that listened to that unironically, where they actually, that they actually dug, C.W. McCall or those guys, and they were actually nice about it and thought I should do another one, so, or else maybe they were goofing me too.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Just don't know. Yeah.
I put the last song I put on there was that really goofy dance remix of Convoy, and I kind of put that on there as a punchline so that if people listened to it and thought it was serious, would realize that hopefully that we're just having fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was pretty happy with it. Like there weren't too many people that freaked out or we were angry or thought we were being mean or anything like that. So it was cool.
Good. That's good.
And it'll give me another genre to start to explore if I get burn out on new wave.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry I won't be able to follow along with that.
You know what's becoming a challenge, and this is just the numbers, is,
Yeah.
after you do 23 mixes, and each of them has, I don't know, like 15 or 16 songs on it, maybe, I don't know, maybe 20, 18, 20.
Yeah.
But you've done, the better part of 500 songs,
Hmm.
and then it becomes a game where you're like, okay, I could do, the ninth song from Men Without Hats, but at what point does it become less interesting? Like I try
Right.
to keep them interesting, and we're blessed so far because I think 23 into it, it's still interesting.
Right. It
But
definitely is.
if at some point I find that they're not as interesting, then I may take a little time off, and look into other things. Like one of the things I've been looking into is maybe doing something that's more focused on, the goth/dark wave
Oh, yeah.
movements.
There
Kind
you
of
go.
see what I could do with, not play all the Cure hits or whatever Depeche Mode hits, but like, dig like the next level down and make it so maybe it's a little less accessible to casual listeners, but it will
Right.
be more accessible to people that want something that's a little bit more a little bit down and dirty.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm thinking about. And I started doing a show on the radio station,
Hmm.
Generic Mail Radio,
No.
that on Tuesday nights, that's like 3 hours of live tracks from all the groups that are also mostly from the period too, so it's not, it's not Flock of Seagulls from 2014. I mean, it's, Flock of Seagulls from, 1983 or
Right.
whatever, like
Exactly.
captured live. And,
Hmm.
it's hard to find the tracks, but,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm not doing bootlegs either. I mean,
No.
I'm once again playing, but with copyright rules. And
Hmm.
so I'm finding these live tracks that were legitimate releases by people,
Well, that's
so,
cool.
it's not like a Grateful Dead thing where I'm finding,
Hmm.
mixing board bootlegs that someone recorded for fun. I mean, these are all legitimate recordings that came out through the studios at some point, but
Right.
still, it gives you, it's just trying to mix it up a little bit.
Right. But recently you did do a What Are They Doing Now
I did.
CD. That
Well,
was a breath of fresh air. I really appreciate. You missed out a few people though, but that's okay.
well, I was, I really want to do another one. Like, I wish more people would listen to that one, because maybe they will after we talk about it.
They should.
But, it really came out of me doing what you were doing, which was, geez, I wonder what the Fix are doing now.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was on vacation. We were in Turks and Caicos, and I was thinking, I came up with this idea, and I was like, I've really done like vintage 80s period songs. What are these folks doing now? So as soon as I came back from vacation, I put that one together.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to research it, because it's kind of amazing how many of the groups are still recording.
Oh yeah.
Now, some of them aren't all the same people, but
No.
some of them were.
Majority of them. Yeah.
It was cool though.
Yeah.
Berlin is on there.
Yeah.
Trying to think of all the people. I think Flock of Seagulls is
Flock
on
of
there.
Seagulls
But
is on there. Yeah.
I went through, and it was like a survey. It wasn't all like tightly focused on 1982. I mean, it was more general, but
Mhm.
it was all groups from the 80s, and it was amazing how much good stuff. Oh, Information Society was on there.
Yeah.
But it was amazing how much good stuff there was.
Definitely.
Depeche Mode was on there.
Mhm.
Duran Duran.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of them were still doing stuff that's, to me, it's relevant.
Oh yeah.
And you wouldn't mind hearing
Right.
in an environment, or hearing them live, or
Mhm.
hearing it on the radio even. It's kind of dismaying that they can't get more radio play, but
Right. Well,
you
and
know,
they don't get it here, unfortunately, in America. If you go, uh, say over in England or just in the UK in general, you get that's all over the place. They have albums, coming out their wazoo, And it's very seldom ever filters. I mean, Duran, Depeche Mode, the big heavy hitters, Pet Shop Boys just had a new album recently, super.
Yep.
That stuff, yeah, that's going to transcend because they've been a mainstay for a long time, and some formula they've got going on, and their fan base is just massive. But you get people like Johnny Hates Jazz and Flock of Seagulls, Modern English, Kajagoogoo, people like that, even Aha, as long as they've been in the business. They've got albums and they're making hit records, but, if you're not here, if you're not, it's over there, and, they're still selling, but,
Well, I'm gonna put, I'll do another one of those. I just, I put it out there and I thought, wow, this is gonna catch on like wildfire, because it's like, it's like I'm unearthing these treasures, and it's taken a little longer for people to kind of catch on to that one. But you were obviously there early on. So, I mean, but it was actually one of the ones that I found more gratifying, and if you look at that one, it was one of the first ones that I actually mastered in high definition, and it was kind of like a turning point for me too with the technology.
Right.
But I mean, it was a lot of fun, and it was really an eye opener because, some of the groups are doing good stuff, but a lot of them are doing good stuff.
Oh yeah.
And they're still being true to their nature, not trying to do the latest craze. I mean, it still sounds like their stuff.
Right.
So that was really cool.
So, and then two, reason I like a lot of the mixtapes that you have, and I'm always looking for older new old music, however you put that, because just when I think I've found everything that I could possibly find that was made in the 80s, somebody comes along and says, "Hey, have you heard this one?" And I'm like, "Who? Who's that? Where'd they come from?" And I'm looking at that on the first one that you did, and it opens with "Lips Like Sugar" by Echo and the Bunnymen, and that's one of my favorite Bunnymen songs. And then it goes into "Bang a Gong" by the Power Station. But then you go a little further down, the Mighty Lemon Drops, Inside Out. So I actually remember skipping to that because I'd never heard it before. So then I started to know, and I started to go through a lot of the mixtapes and that you'd put up, and just find ones that I'd never heard before, and I just started listening to them.
Well, and it doesn't really matter to me too much how people consume them. If they can just go through them and pick and choose, because we put all the time markers in there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
So they can, you can listen to it however you want. A lot of people tell me they are in work, they're in the office and they can't do, the other type of streaming radio like we have.
Right.
But for some reason, YouTube is open in their network at work, and so those mixtapes are a really good alternative for them.
Definitely.
But yeah, I get people that say, I skipped to, track 5 and then I listen through track 9. That's fine too. It's all good. I just want to kind of share. It's like we're all sharing the wealth here, and people are getting educated if they hadn't already heard it, and they're getting reacquainted if they did.
Right.
And it's kind of putting us all in a better place, so to speak, or maybe most of us, at least. I think that was a better time for some reasons. So, but like I said, however they consume it, that's fine. I mean, they're getting the word out. The artists are getting awareness, and that's really what it's all about, is sharing this stuff, and
definitely
kind of recapturing a feeling in some cases.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in general, most people are nostalgic to an extent. I do believe, I guess I really shouldn't say that. I would like to say the older people get, the more nostalgic they become. But I've seen some youngsters out there, like my kids, for example, in their 30s, going, "Man, I remember when the 90s was like," and I'm like, "Oh, please, don't go there."
Well,
no love for the 90s.
Well, what I was going to say is kind of along those lines, but if you look at the comments, which I know you do, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll see a surprising number of people that say, I'm 18 or I'm 20,
Mm-hmm.
and this music really kicks, what,
Yeah.
and I really wish I'd been born then, or I'm grateful that this stuff is out here for me to find, and
Yes.
to me, that's really a great thing because, we're going to influence another generation or help to influence them when they might otherwise never find the stuff. So
Exactly.
that's like a really cool thing too.
Yeah.
I think the comments in general are amazing, and you've done that, but you go through, especially that first one.
Mm-hmm.
There's might be 3,000 comments,
Yeah.
and and it's astounding. There's someone who pummels us, but
Mm-hmm.
like in general, people are, you find that pretty much most people are on your team, at a different level. They might say, well, you should have done this differently or whatever, and offer, valid critique. But for the most part, there's not a lot of hate
No.
for this stuff.
No.
Like, there's usually support. So that's fun and gratifying. I mean, it might not have gotten to 23 volumes if there'd been tons of hate.
This is
Right off the
true.
bat.
That you kind of be with a borderline. What do they call it? One of those people that beats themselves up all the time. It's like sadomasochist.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have bailed. But, I put the first one up as a test. I mean, I didn't even know if it would work.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know if it would get on, first of all. Like, I thought, well, they'll probably just take it down in a day when I wanted to test it out.
Right.
But it's hanging in there. So,
Yeah. Well,
go
I
ahead.
admire you for having the tenacity and the motivation to put these all up. I remember a few years back when I was doing a radio show very briefly on the internet, about 6 months, and it was once a week. And my goodness, the challenge that I had trying to come up with new and different ways to, engage the audience and trying not to be too obscure, as you said, and yet trying not to fall into the whole mainstream top 40s thing, because I like that, but I have a tendency to lean towards the other end of the spectrum.
Well,
And
yeah.
yeah, I am like the person that listens to the 9th song on the album by Men in Without Hats. So,
Well, no slight to that song, but like I'm just trying to keep it so it has one leg in the familiarity
absolutely,
scale. But
yeah,
and also I think that there's a million people out there who have done a great job of keeping, Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Take on Me, and those songs are great too, but they're out there. Like,
absolutely, they're all over.
And it's been done a million times properly, like where they've done a great job with it. So
right.
How is my millionth and first attempt at doing it gonna, improve, the state of the genre?
Right.
I don't know that it will at this point.
Right.
So if I can bring some of the other stuff more to the front and help in some little way, I think that's a better goal, at this point.
Right. So when you've chose the new wave, see, that's what really triggered my interest right there, because I always, even years ago when I actually listened to the 80s music in the 80s, people actually did that, by the way, kids. So it had, the top 40s things, but there was always the little, like you said, the Echo and the Bunnymen, Psychedelic Furs, Susie and the Banshees. It was like, this is interesting. It's not mainstream and it's not underground, but it's kind of like right in the middle. And then that arena of artists, was that's the new wave that came in right at the beginning of the 80s, along with new romanticism and synth pop and all of that. And so I always found myself going back to that specific genre of 80s and being very satisfied. Whereas if I needed to hear Aha, which is like my favorite 80s song of all time, I can listen to it all day long, or Cyndi Lauper, I'm okay with that. I can do that because I have that at the ready. But a lot of times when you try and engage other people, the music listeners, that, I love the 80s. Oh, it's such a great time. was like, okay, so, you're familiar with After the Snow by Modern English. Who?
Yeah.
Okay. The guys that did Belt With You. Oh, yeah, that was a cool song. What did you call it at
Right.
first? So it's like, so there's not really a whole
Right.
lot of,
Yeah,
unless,
they don't know
yeah,
that was a whole that was a whole
yeah,
album.
yeah,
So
I
they
know.
know one
So,
song.
but then if you speak to someone who's British, like my husband, he's from Scotland, and he and I, get into these conversations about different artists back then. He's more of a rock person. Rush's his favorite band, but he also knows how to talk the rest of it because he grew up listening to that, where it didn't necessarily filter over here.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, they know about this music, so here, so that's where I get a lot of my requests from the listeners. Oh, next week can you play this, and this, and this, and a lot of times I already had it because it's like already on my laptop.
Sure.
So for you, an actual, so to sound too, condescending, an actual American that listens to new wave and seems to, be comfortable in that genre, that was just, wow.
That
Okay.
but it just worked for me because, well, in high school, I think I want to say that I was like an album-oriented rock person.
Okay.
I wasn't really exposed to too much of the stuff, and that was like, 1976, 77, 78. I had all the Rush albums, and I had, Pink Floyd, The Wall, and, whatever else was going on. Van Halen 1,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess was called Van Halen. It's now called Van Halen 1 because, it's just like World War One,
Yeah.
But, those were the things we were listening to back then. And maybe a little Southern rock, Molly Hatchet, and, but as I got ready to graduate from high school, I started to, get exposed to things like Melt With You and, We Got the Beat and Too Shy, and Soft Cell, Tainted Love, those kind of things that were being played in the clubs. And
Right.
it kind of made an impression. And then when I got to college, obviously, you get exposed. I got exposed to things that were a little bit even deeper than that, like the early Cure stuff, and then even Echo and the Bunnymen, which you talked about, and different groups like that. And but it all stuck with me because it kind of felt, it felt very European and different, but at the same time, a lot of it has there's like a little soul of rock and roll in there too, and so it kind of made it feel comfortable to me,
Right.
and it felt like a natural progression. There's a tape on YouTube that not a lot of people find, mercifully, but it's actually it's the only actual recording I have of a really early happy hour gig that we did.
Oh, nice.
Live, but you'll get a sense of what we were thinking about because you'll hear Figures on a Beach,
Mm-hmm.
Gloria,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll hear Van Halen, You Really Got Me, and then you'll hear The Strange Love, and then you'll hear but it's like it's all over the lot.
Yeah.
Even more so than much more so than what you're hearing now on
Right.
my channel.
Right.
But you'll get a sense of my roots, because you'll hear Molly Hatchet on that thing.
Wow.
You'll hear really, it's like all over the map. But that's what our fan base in school wanted to hear, that stuff for happy hour, because you were reaching a lot of different people.
Right.
And they weren't all goth guys, and they
No.
weren't all, synth pop guys. They were, fraternity dudes and just random, chicks. And it's like everyone was having a good time, but, trying to keep it so that it made everyone a little bit happy
Right.
early on.
Well, that's good.
So, yeah, but if you check that out, I think you'll be shocked. But also you'll hear, even though you can tell it's not as tight as the ones I'm doing now, you can hear that that I did put a lot of effort into making the transitions, sound even then.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's also kind of cool that I found that because I thought all that stuff was lost for the ages.
Nice.
And I found one tape that had it, and I just transferred it, so that I could put it up there as an archive. But but it's fun to have it up there. If I find any more old ones, they may not go up, but that one's up there. So.
But that's good though, because that's like the forerunner or whatever, the one that's
Well, yeah, it
the
gives
one
you a
that
sense.
started it all, so to speak.
Well, yeah, kind of. I
Yeah.
mean, like you can see that's evolution always has a starting
Yeah.
point, right? So
There you
that
go.
was kind of like the starting point.
It's a good way to put it. Definitely.
Yes.
If you need any ideas for your dark wave goth, if you decide to go in that direction, recently I bought was a dual CD. It was like, was it four? I think it was actually four of them. So it was a
Hmm.
box set of 80's goth music and 90's goth music. So it was quite a few, besides Bauhaus and I can't remember.
Well, yeah,
Just
it's like, Joy Division, Bauhaus, and
yeah, definitely. So
it's like early Cure, and then there's some groups that I've got to do a lot of research on before I put it up there because I don't know the histories of all the dark wave groups. So
right,
I just
right.
want to make sure I'm not putting up anything that's going to create some type of fervor.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you don't want to go into any type of
And
satanic
I always, and
symbols
I
or
always,
anything.
you'll notice there's not a lot of language on. Not that I'm a prude, but just
No,
I
no.
realize now that a lot of people listen to these things in work environments. So
Yeah.
I just shy away from the really extreme stuff, that might inflame something or somebody's opinion. Maybe there'll be another place for that. Or I certainly could do more with that on the radio station, I guess, in the evening or whatever. What's interesting about the radio station? We haven't really talked about that yet, but it's out there, folks. Genericmail.com. Just go on the website and look for the radio, streaming radio link. But, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. Isn't that what Jimmy Buffett
That's
said?
what Jimmy
Um,
Buffett says.
but it's also always, 3 o'clock in the afternoon somewhere. So I'm kind of cognizant of that now with the radio station. At first I thought, well, geez, now after like 9 o'clock, I can put on some, maybe a little racier stuff or more obscure.
Right.
But I got to be careful because, there's someone in Malaysia that's getting ready to go to lunch.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to, because we have listeners on that, just like on YouTube from all over the world.
Nice.
So you kind of got to be cognizant of that.
Oh, always. I think as long as, you stay true to yourself and your own values, people respect you for that. I mean, I don't think you're going to get the odd person who's like, oh man, this stuff is boring, it doesn't have any sex and violence in it, it's just like, well, go listen to Jay-Z, I don't know what to tell you. But,
But the cool thing about the radio station too, which I'm sure that people will appreciate, is there's like 1,800 songs in the active playlist. So
right.
you're basically hearing everything I've got right now that's in digital format.
Nice.
I haven't ripped all the records I ever bought, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
I was going to say, you'd still be doing it. I mean, thousands of
I'd be doing it
LPs.
forever.
Yeah,
I'd be doing it until the cows came home.
forever.
But there's a lot of stuff on there, and pretty much all of it I've approved as thinking this is worthy. It's like I'm not just putting garbage up there to fill in time. But it's like all stuff that I think people are going to enjoy. So, and also they'll give you a sense of what you might hear on volume 24 if you listen to that.
There you go.
The active radio station right now.
I'll mentally try and pick out my favorites and then psychically throw them, like transcend them into your mind so that you can.
Well, anyone who's listening, or even you, I mean, you know how to even you know how to reach me. And the email address, the main one is dj@genericmail.com. And if people want to suggest groups, songs, movements, programming ideas. I'm looking for some ideas to do with the evening times, for 2 or 3 hours on the weeknights, that will kind of expand the potential reach, and the width and depth of what's offered on the radio station. So, anyone's got really cool ideas, I'd love to hear them. And we're very responsive. I try to be with all of the social media. So,
Well, that's good.
folks send me something, you're going to hear something back. I mean, a lot of time, I remember I was in Atlantic City recently,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're up at like 3:30 in the morning, you may not be at your best, but I I heard my phone fire off, and it was some guy, probably in Oslo. I don't know where they were. They were somewhere not there. And he was like, "Hey man, you rock," like that. And I'm like, "Well, thanks, you rock too," And I think they were really excited. The first of all, I don't think they expected anyone would actually get back to them at 3:30 in the morning, and then we kind of were having a conversation, sitting by the blackjack tables, which was really cool.
That's neat.
But I do try to get back to everyone as soon as I can if I don't get you right away.
Well, that's good. And I think if you don't mind, I'd like to be able to have some input or give you some input in the Where Are They Now series for your next one.
Sure.
I've got
Okay.
5 right off the top of my head. I definitely know. I was privy to the initial launch of Lamal's, it was his first solo single for about 6 years, because he puts them out every so often. But this one was significant for him, because it had to do with the year that they were launched into the limelight, so to speak, as Kajagoogoo, and it's called 1983. So that's actually a very catchy pop song, and I don't know. I think if you put that on there, people probably go, "Man, what'd you put this on there for? I can't get this song out of my head." Well, there you just gave it. That's the formula for a good pop song. If it's catchy and you know all the words to it, then it worked.
Okay. Well, I'd love to check that out.
Yeah.
So I'll make a point to do that. What else you got? You want to talk about those now? You want to send them over?
I will send them over to you in email form, or I can send them via Twitter. It's mostly Modern English is touring right now. They're actually going to be in Seattle next month, and they've got their new album.
You influenced, in Volume 23, you mentioned Modern English, and that was like right at the right time. So I was like, oh, I got to put this on here.
And I'm listening to it going, boy, he sure did make up for that trucker thing, did he?
Well, but that Modern English album, it's like, that's really like kind of dark. They actually, I read on some of the lists I looked at online, they actually considered Modern English to be a dark wave band, at that point. Like they weren't the pop band that everyone thinks they are. They were very dark.
Well, and a lot of these bands, they initially came out, I think they were like post-punk, or maybe they were punk before, because there's a cutoff time, in case people don't know this. There actually is a cutoff time for original punk, and then anything after that is post-punk. So I think there's like a discrepancy when people say, oh yeah, this is a great punk album. No, it's post-punk. But with them and I believe Psychedelic Furs, the Go-Go's initially were punk. And then they ended up making that transition, to alternative or pop or however they decided to go. You do definitely see in the initial albums that they made, the very original ones, and then they make the other successes with the rest of their music, and you can definitely see the transition they made. Not that it was a bad thing, but it just goes to show you, they took that step, to reinvent themselves, and I think that's probably what keeps a lot of, musicians in the limelight for so long is, you have to have that, okay, let's see what we can wow them with now, or how's my head with this song, or what do we do with, let's add these instruments into the band and see what happens. So, it's great, because fans are always, waiting for the next big thing.
Yep.
So
I saw the Go-Go's going to be here in, I want to say August. I guess it's their official farewell tour.
Oh.
Sometimes people like The Who have a farewell tour every 3 years, but I think this is like the real one.
Well, because they did break up for a while, and then they came back. So
well, I think one of them left. like
Yes.
for good. Like it may have
Hmm.
been an ugly legal thing, but
Yeah.
they're apparently all the other ones are back now, so that might be interesting. They're playing at the relatively not like an intimate club here, but like a relatively small hall, so that
Oh,
might be
okay.
fun.
Well, that's cool. I remember when we saw Psychedelic Furs here for the first time. It was at the Moore Theater, or maybe it was El Corazon. Can't
Mm.
remember, but I remember when they were at the Moore Theater, and it's kind of a small venue, but it's big enough to hold some 500 or 600 fans of Psychedelic Furs. And Richard Butler was just all over the
Hmm.
place. He just so amazing. And I remember all these people walking up and down the aisles. And I'm wanting to trip them. I'm like, would you stop
Hmm.
walking in front of me? And all these girls had all this goth looking stuff on with this
Yeah.
makeup and this torn tights. And
Well,
I'm like, when did P Furs become goth? I don't know. My husband's looking at me going, oh, you know. So it's just like, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe they're
But their
confused.
heart was in the right place, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think it was just like maybe they were
Uh,
just trying to do the '80s thing, and it just got a little overboard. It's
we were
okay.
always fans of the Psych first too. Like, Richard Butler is his vocals are amazing. Back
Okay.
then it was like Forever Now and stuff, and it's like, I always thought he sounded like a guy who he had like 3 shots of bourbon
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
2 unfiltered camels right before he went to the studio. But I mean,
Or
he's very talented though. It was
yeah.
just like it was unusual, but it was still really cool. But it worked for the music actually.
Oh, definitely. And if you ever heard any early Tom Waits, I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's like you don't even know that's him. It's like, wow,
right.
he sounds like a normal person. This is great. And then, it's like you hear him now. It's like,
Right.
oh yeah, that's
And
Tom Waits.
then he kicked into that Heath Ledger Joker kind of thing that he's been doing for a while. Like very.
Yeah.
It's almost affected, and then it almost sounds Midwestern to me sometimes too, which I
Yeah.
don't know if that's really a thing or not, but because I worked in Chicago for a while, and that's like people talk differently than we do down here in the DC area. Of course, everyone has a dialect, but
Well, and everyone
yeah, I know what you
too,
mean.
so apparently. I guess when I go over, and I don't know, have you've been overseas? Did anyone ever tell you they loved your accent?
Uh, no, I have never been overseas, but I do get people all the time that do what you were alluding to earlier, where
Yeah.
they're like, "So what part of Europe are you from?" Or like they think I'm from the UK, which
Wow.
I guess is a natural assumption, maybe based on the music that we deal with usually. But I've never been
Yeah.
to the UK, and I mean, I guess as close as I've been to the UK is Canada, because they actually
This
share
is
the
true.
Queen.
This is
But
true. This is
I've
true.
never been to Europe, so
Yeah.
that's maybe. I did have a guy that asked me to come and play at his pub in
Ooh.
Ireland at some point
Ooh.
last year, but it was a little bit. The logistics were a little bit bigger than I could get my arms around, so that didn't happen.
Well, it was the thought that counts. The
Yeah,
fact
I
that
mean,
he
no, it
actually
was
wanted
cool.
you
It
to
was
come
it was
there,
cool.
that is great. Wish somebody invited me to
Yes.
come and sing at their pub.
I wish that if anyone wants me to come and play at their pub in the United States, though, you got me a line.
Exactly.
I might get back into it.
GenericMailDJ.com. Right? Did I do that?
No, stranger things have happened. Yep, generic mail. Well, just genericmail.com is the website,
Okay.
and we're all over social media, so it shouldn't be hard to find.
Okay, Kelly. Well, speaking of which, I think we just hit the hour mark. Can you believe we've been talking for an hour? This is great.
No, it flew by for us.
It did. And so my next question, because this is my first podcast and I'm just mimicking what others have done in the past, where can we find you on social media?
Well, at generic mail 80's is the Twitter handle. Like I said, email me at dj@genericmail.com. Genericmail.com is the main website. The streaming is also embedded on there, so you can find that there 24/7. And then the YouTube channel, just search generic mail DJ, and we're going to be the first and only result that comes up for that. So, I think that covers the main ones, right? We don't have a like a Snapchat or any of that stuff.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yeah. It's just search for that. It's facebook.com/generic male 80s is the actual address. But if you type it in the search box, it'll kind of self-populate before you even get done, I think, usually.
Yeah, that's good like that. It's nice to be able to have a unique username. Wink, wink. So speaking of which, I am at 80s Music Girl on Twitter, and I have a blog spot, which is actually hyperlinked into my profile. So I don't want to send people all over the world to try and find my blog spot. It's already there. And then I have a fan page, 80s Music Girl on Facebook, and I am on Instagram too, but that's just mostly recently just pictures of my cat, who takes up a lot of our time, and his new thing is he likes to play in the paper bags, so we just get all the paper bags from Winco.
That's something we share. So
yeah, and throw them on the floor, and he just dives in them. And then he started to eat one, so we had to take it away from him. So
it happened to me too.
Yeah.
I mean, me though, not the pet.
I was gonna say.
So yeah.
So how did that work? Just to fill in some more time and close out the show. Tell me about your paper bag incident.
Oh no.
No.
That'll be on. That's going to be on our new website, emergencyroomstories.com.
Oh, okay, one of those. Okay, well, we don't want to hear about that one yet, so.
It'll be on the website.
Okay.
So, well, this has been really cool. Thank you.
It has been. Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate you being able to. I don't want to say humor me, but you're very, very obliging, and it was a privilege to be able to interview you and. Just really delve deeper into what I've been able to see at face value on YouTube. It's brought me many hours of joy, of happy listening, and a lot of new music to find out there. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for the time and your kindness and allowing us to participate in your podcast and your forum, and I look forward to being able to keep on doing it for a long time. So thanks a lot. And thanks to all the listeners that we've met so far and the ones that we're going to meet in the future too. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.